Hi everyone. Hi everyone who's joining. Hi Mkhadi. Hi Labu Insta Limba. Um, just Lebu also joined. Hello, ladies. For those that are joining for the first time, as usual, can you just highlight where you're joining us from for today? Mkhadi, my friend, says hello, gorgeous. Hello. Amity Lifestyle and Branding. Hello. Hi. So today we're discussing Proverbs 31 woman and her in-laws. A very interesting topic. Let's get started. So in opening, the issue of in-laws, they are part of the package, as you can imagine. So once you go into union with somebody else, the same way that you have a family, they also have a family. So this is a concept that we need to embrace and come to a point where we say, okay, this is what it is, and then what is the best way to work around this? Because on average, most of us will have complaints about our in-laws, especially the mother-in-laws and the sister-in-laws. Usually they're the ones that will, challenge you. And I wonder if, sister-in-laws are not being challenged on the other side. It's always interesting. Miss G, hello Miss Giko, hello. Victoria Renz joined. Normally Chwabi also joined. I hope I pronounced it properly. Okay, so the issue of family is a big deal. Family is the place where everything happens. Family is a place where you can be broken or you can be made. So that is the brewing ground for good things and bad things, based on what we do or not do. Everyone as an adult is basically a product of their home, their environment, their circumstances. But the beautiful thing, like we say, is that the good thing is that we are of God, despite us finding ourselves in families. So the good thing with that is, at any point, if the circumstances you find yourself in or that you grew up in are not necessarily positive, or there are places for improvement, you should improve them. And God gives us the authority, the privilege, the responsibility, the possibility to change anything that we need to change. Because if we are of Him, we can literally be anything at any point. And our circumstances, Level Insta says she's joining from Wales in the UK. Okay, hi. So our circumstances don't necessarily have to define us, but unfortunately, until a point where we become conscious, our circumstances do define us. So now, the issue of marriage, or the union of marriage, is the source of place where we start talking about in-laws, because it's two families that must come together as one. And remember, each family has its own circumstances, background, like all those dynamics are unique for each family. So the open secret about marriage is two shall become one. And all of us miss that point. All of us miss the point, because at some point we get lost and we make this about just me and you, like your husband, wife, husband. And unfortunately, there is other things that behind the wife, that are behind the husband, that have to be considered, because they'll also affect how we each engage in the relationship of marriage, how we engage on decision making, the things we like, the things we don't like, the plans we make, the discussions that we're going to have. So the open secret is that the two becoming one is not just between the couple. The families must also become one, so to say. So now with that is, for them to become one, two can never become one unless they agree to become one. Now, God says in terms of agreement, he says, how can two walk together unless they agree? What it means is, as long as there's no agreement of whatever that we're trying to do, it's going to be a problem to work together. And when we work together, well, most likely we have a level of agreement. And remember, we don't have to have a perfect situation. It's not possible, because each individual comes from a different background, comes from a family with a unique background. So the agreement is a level of maturity, and spiritual maturity to be specific, because we don't have to be excited about agreeing. But if God has said it, that marriage for him, it's supposed to be X, we don't have to say, oh, I don't want it X, I want it Y, because once we start changing the formula, most likely that's where we're going to start having problems. So now God says, for us to be in agreement, basically we have to be conscious of, we have to let go of me, we have to let go of parents, we have to let go of friends. So any relationship that will hinder with the union of marriage has to be minimized. And also remember, when I say you let go, it doesn't mean you must never see them. No, it doesn't mean that. It just means you must consciously embrace the fact that what comes first is the marriage, is the union. Now, sometimes you in the relationship, of course, that's why you're in this relationship, because the two of you agreed and you're on the same page. That's why you end up saying, okay, let's do something together. But like what we want to discuss today is, sometimes the other people in the relationship don't agree, or they are not supportive. Now that's where the problem comes in. And also the issue of saying, letting go of me, is you understand that it's no longer just about you, what you want, when you want it. Now you take the union of marriage, which was created by God, and you take it to the one who created it and ask him and say, what is this union supposed to be? How is it supposed to be? Who is supposed to be part of this? And then God says it's just supposed to be him and the two of us in this marriage. Ms. Jiko says, true. Normally Chwabi says, also let go of what we think marriage is. Absolutely. But allow God to teach us how to be married to each other. Absolutely, Norma. That's what I was also just saying, that the confusion comes in that, sometimes you are married and then you want to act like you're still single. You want to hang out with your friends most of the time, like, and when your partner expects you or asks you to say, but when are we going to do our own things? When are we going to have our own plans? You get upset and you say your partner is controlling you. Because as long as you're not ready to give up the me, you mustn't get married. You must continue doing me until you are ready to give up me and do us. Because marriage is for two people. And now part of the in-laws now is to address the issue of the others that want to come in the marriage and make themselves the center of the marriage. When God himself says, a man shall leave his, and I think God knew, God says, a man will leave his mother and his father and mother to come together and be co-joined to his wife, so to say. It's interesting that God didn't say the woman will leave her father and mother. Very interesting. Norma says me must die. Power right there says, yes, absolutely. So there's something about God saying that the man will leave his father and mother and cling onto his wife. Yeah, God knows us best. So now, as we can imagine, there can be hindrances. Today the main thing is the in-laws, but let's remember, friends can be a problem. We cannot prioritize friends in a relationship. You cannot continue acting like you're single but want the fruits of marriage. Is not going to work. Once you make that decision and that commitment, you have to go fully in. Like with anything, if you go half in, you will not give your best, because you know you've got options. You can always walk away. Then you will not be able to give your all, because you have not given yourself in. And sometimes we do that intentionally because we fear being disappointed. And then I would say, if you're not sure about the relationship that you want to go into, I'm talking about going into, because if you're already in, it's something else. rather don't go in. Don't go in, half out, because it's going to be a problem. You will not be able to produce what you're supposed to produce. And then I want to just mention, the purpose of marriage before we go to the in-laws. The purpose or the function of marriage for God, because it's not about us. God created us and gave us function for His glory. He wants to be magnified through our lives. He wants to experience His creation through us, because we are the ones who can create things. He's given us that ability to create things, to experience things. And when we are in alignment and live heaven on earth, it gives glory to Him, because that's where we say He knows He has been successful. And when we become conscious of what He has given to us. So now the main purpose and function of marriage is to actually create and support family units, because everything on this earth is going to be based on, it comes from the family. So now, like, sometimes we say, no, I don't care, I don't want to be married, I don't care if I'm married or not, I'm just going to have a child of my own, I don't need a man. And sometimes we do that when we've been disappointed, or when we see so many relationships that have failed. Then we end up saying you don't care whether you're married or not. But we know deep down, everyone who has a child, you wish the father of the child can be there, honestly speaking, because that support means everything. And for the child who is there, that we forget sometimes and make this about ourselves. Children are not objects. We cannot just intend to have kids even if the fathers are not there or they're not participating, because the one who's going to feel the pinch the most is that child. So the family unit is the basic foundation, is the building block of life, basically. So now we have to accept when we face challenges, it doesn't mean we can't be disappointed, or sometimes say, okay, maybe this is my situation, I need to replan or relook. But it doesn't change what this was created for. Family is everything. So that's why when we have challenges with the family units, the children suffer. Sometimes we're not even aware they suffer. And then when they're older, everybody's surprised. Why is this one so dishonest? Why is this one such a narcissist? Why is this one such a bully? Why is this one cheating all the time? Why is this one a drunkard? But then we forget the circumstances this child grew up in. So we have to be cognizant of that all the time. It's not just about me, what I want, what I can afford. Because sometimes when we can afford, we think we can just make transactions. We can't. When it comes to human life, we cannot do that. So now, as much as we can, we should ask God for guidance, for help, so that we can be able to create structures, strong family structures, so that we can raise kids in families that are comfortable, secure, because that alone makes all the difference in a child's life. It gives them a sense of security. It affirms them. And when they don't get that, they have to find ways of trying to fight for this love, trying to prove that they are worthy, because deep down they almost feel like they're not worthy, because why was my father not there? Why was my mother not there? These are questions that, especially around from the age of like 10, 11, 12, kids start expressing that anger of absenteeism of parents. So it's a serious thing, and we should not encourage to just get into a relationship if we're not ready. Having kids, especially if we're not ready. So now with the family structure, God has created this to form family units, because His creation is there, His multiplication is there, the growth is there, the legacies are there, generational legacies are built from the family. Miss Chico says marriage is a triangle. God at the top, wife and husband on either side. Focus is to draw together towards God. Absolutely. Norma says, so we can raise the godly offspring the godly way. Amen. Absolutely. And it's not a spiritual thing, because I think sometimes we over spiritualize it, and then that gives us the right to justify not taking responsibility, to be there for kids, actively engage them, parent them consciously, because sometimes you're there but you're emotionally not present with your kids. Sometimes you're physically there but you're not spiritually present with your kids, and it affects children. They can feel it, because children have the purest state of heart and mind, and they won't logically tell you or engage you, but they are created in such a way that it's almost like a machine. A child is supposed to be guided excuse me, guided and raised in a certain way. And even on a scientific level, there is an explanation for this. There is something that happens in a child's part of the brain that every child needs, and that part of the brain is developed by us being physically there and being able to affirm our children. When they're on the right track, we say, I'm proud of you, I'm happy, I love you. You touch them, you guide them. When they do something that is off, you correct them. You don't let kids just do what they want because you think you want to make them happy. You can't do that. So now when we fail to do that, what happens is that center, that part in part of the brain is not developed. Then that's why then it's easy for a child who did not get the proper parenting, so to say, meaning the presence of parents saying yes, saying no, affirming and correcting, then they easily have addictive behaviors, alcohol, sex, abnormal relationship. They are narcissists, they are bullies, because there's a part of their physical brain that was not developed when it was supposed to be developed. So now for this creation to happen through the family legacies, the important thing is that the marriage is the unit that God creates to build on this. But because we also said, Norma says, I agree, this is being consciously there is important. Limba says, narcissist, second time today I hear someone talking about it. Guess this is a confirmation, I need to look into it. Absolutely. Okay, so now for God to be able to do what he wants, the nice thing about God is he's not actually asking for our permission or for our advice in terms of what to do. Everything he has set apart, everything is ready. The good thing is when we are ready and ask him, he gives us the answers and our lives just become so much easier. So now for this family units to be able to exist and to build generational legacies and to glorify God, his magnitude and all of that, the most important thing that the marriage is supposed to do is break generational curses. So now this is something that we don't normally hear, but the function of marriage, two people coming together, therefore two families coming together, is to be able to break bonds and things or curses, whatever you want to call them, that have been happening in each individual family. So now when we come together and when we are blessed enough and be conscious enough and say, okay, since this is what God has designed marriage to be, that when he pulls two rivers together, two streams together to form a river, so to say, because when you are alone is not the same as when two people are together pulling together. There is more power and force. More can be achieved when two people are joined together and God is the center. So now the only way for this to happen is through consciousness. When we invite God into these things and we follow his guidance and we accept his presence in our marriages, then we sit down and said, okay, from your side, what are the generational problems that exist? Okay, and what about from your side? So when we get into a relationship like that, we should be able to sit down and be honest, because I think most of the time we get into marriages because we just have to get married, but we don't understand the deep thing. That's why it's difficult to give up me. That's why it's difficult to share resources. That's why we want the other one to know about our power, because we think we're creating our own things when God has already created everything. So now when you understand that God has created all of this, you don't have to figure it out. You just ask him and move closer to him and said, God, okay, this is marriage. I don't just want to go into marriage just so I can have kids. I can, when I go to events or to society or whatever, I can say I'm married. There's no point if you are married and God is not there. It's totally useless, because even the kids are going to be frustrated, honestly, because then you don't have time to sit down and ask God, okay, what are the things that we need to be breaking so that we can build? There are certain things that if you don't break, whatever that you build is weak. Whatever that you build is fragile. Then it just kind of compromises. Then it creates new problems in the relationship. Norma says this is eye-opening and deep. So now sitting down and saying, what are the generational problems from your side, from the men's side, from the female side? So generational problems, we're talking about things like you can say, okay, I noticed that, from my lineage, no one's marriage succeed. Everybody's single. People get married, but their marriages don't stand. Or everybody's fatherless, or all the kids are fatherless. Or most of the time, the fathers and the brothers, all of them cannot, keep relationships together. They always have affairs. They have kids everywhere. Or you can say there's a problem of addiction in our family lineage. There's a problem of poverty. There is a challenge of no one goes to school. There is a challenge of falling pregnant and losing the babies. So there's always a trend that would exist, because humankind, by the virtue of that we exist in the world, in this physical world, there's always going to be challenges there and there. There's going to be limitations there and there. But when we rise in glory and go to God, He's the one who gives us the wisdom, the courage to be able to overcome. Because when we overcome, it magnifies Him and gives glory to Him. So now when we are not aware of that, things keep repeating themselves over and over and over. And even you have your own kids, let's say, every time, like your mom, like all her kids, she doesn't know who the father of her kids is, or whatever that it can be. But you realize that it is the same thing that happened with your mother, it happened with your grandmother, and you are almost in a similar situation, and you ask yourself why. But it's a generational, and these things are very deep. They become genetic. So that's why emotions are very important. That's why trauma has to be acknowledged and processed and treated if needs be, because when we don't stop the process of trauma, it's engraved in our DNA, and whatever that is born of us, we give it that DNA. Whatever fears that we have, we're going to give it to the next generation. Whatever weakness, so to say, that we have, we pass it on. So that's why we always have to go to God, and in terms of this union, that it will produce fruits. Because remember, if we go in together, totally dysfunctional, we're not aware, we just keep doing this thing, we're going to produce exactly the same thing. And even worse for the children, because they have problems from both families. And no one ever sat down and said, but guys, why do we always have this problem in this family? Let's acknowledge it. Let's talk about it. Let's allow ourselves to heal from this. So I'm going to move over to the issue with the in-laws. So with the in-laws is primarily based on two problems. The challenges that we normally have with the in-laws, whether we are the ones that bully our sisters-in-laws, or we are being bullied, sometimes by the sisters-in-laws and the mothers-in-laws. It's either it's a spiritual problem or an economic problem. And also keep in mind that economics and spirituality are very close together. The reason for that is, remember, for the basics that we need in life, we need a level of economics, so we should be able to afford the basics. Now, when we don't afford to get the basics, we become desperate, and we end up getting ourselves in tight situations. We compromise ourselves because we are trying to meet our basic needs. And that alone violates our spiritual state, because when you are forced to act in a way that you wouldn't otherwise want to act, but because you are desperate, then you end up doing it because you are desperate. So now that's why I'm saying economics and spirituality, there is the one can interfere with the other one. So now I'm here to see a mother-in-law who is basically giving the daughter-in-law a problem when she's got resources. What I've realized, and what a bit of research says, is that when we are fighting for resources, we normally do this. If you think about it, on average, most of the mother-in-laws and sisters, they're usually fighting for resources, because when their brother or the son is not producing, no one fights for him. But once there's an element of resources, then they want those resources. What does it mean? It also means that, I mean, we should try, as whatever that we do, educate ourselves and be conscious so that we also don't do it to others, to our own daughter-in-laws, so to say. We must try to build our financial base, at least, so that we don't become too pressed, so that now we end up fighting makoti for the husband because we feel like she's taking our resources. It's a fight for resources. That's the main fight. Now, on the other side, I said it's a spiritual challenge. The reason it's a spiritual challenge is because if somebody is ignoring the fact that God says the man will leave his father and mother to be joined to the wife, it means there's a spiritual problem. There's an element of trauma within their own lives, traumas that we don't know. And the funny thing is, Mama Zala that normally give us problems, it was done to them. Is that a generational thing again? So now it was done to them, it was painful to them, but now they want to do it to you. What does that tell you? So it's a pain that was never processed. Because why would you want to do to somebody something that was done to you and you didn't like it? You felt tortured. But now why are you doing it to somebody else? So it's that thing of generational challenges, cases, whatever that you want to call it, that was not acknowledged, processed, and released. So now you keep doing it. As long as you didn't stop and acknowledge that this emotion, this situation, this thing is doing this to me, you're gonna do it again. And the generation that comes from you will do exactly the same thing again. So now it's spiritual because God says the husband leaves the father and mother. It's for a reason. But it's amazing how people are able to just want to, to come straight into the relationship and make rules around how you guys should do stuff, what they like, what they don't like, what they're not happy about you. And unfortunately, of course, it's sad, it's unfortunate when the husband is actually a mama's baby, if I can summarize it. Mama's baby from a point that he listens to everything his mother says. So he might be old in terms of age, but spiritually, psychologically, emotionally, he's still a baby. Because whatever that you guys discuss or say, it depends what the mother will say. So now in that situation, you must pray for your husband. Pray for him, and not only pray for him, bring him into the understanding of what the situation means, and the fact that if we don't change anything, his own children that he will have with you will have the same problems. So now when we put perspective in what marriage is, what marriage is not, and saying that being married doesn't mean you don't love your parents, but it just means that there's certain things that must be done in a certain way. Mama Zala, she also had her 10 in her marriage. So true. Limba says true, been there. Your partner also ends up not knowing his priorities. It's absolutely like that. So now once your partner himself forgets that verse that God calls that he must leave his father and mother, and unfortunately he continues to be in a state where his mother can manipulate him and remind him that, you remember how we suffered together, I didn't have anything, I did everything for you, and now you're leaving me. That is manipulation. But I also want you to appreciate that such mothers, the mother to boys that are like that, reflect their own pain. It will be great if we're able to sit down or kind of bring to fore the challenges, the realities, acknowledge them and see how we can work it out, because you end up, this ends up creating animosity, and it's going to affect the kids, which is what we don't want. Remember, those kids that are born from us are going to be a reflection of the environment. And not only that, we are solely responsible for those kids. Miss Jiko says broken parents raise broken kids. It's absolutely like that. So by the time a mother is able to manipulate her own child and doesn't even care that his family is falling apart, there's a big problem. she has a big problem, and now the big problem that she has, which she has not solved, she still wants to leave it. She still wants that problem to exist through her son. I'm yet to hear Makoti saying Makoti is bullying the sisters-in-law. We usually don't do that. Most of the time it's going to be from the men's side, where the mother, and it's usually the mother and the sisters, not even the father. Most of the time is the mother and the sisters. But I'm saying we have to be in cognizance to say, by the time somebody does that, it's a reflection of the upbringing. It's a reflection of how he was brought up. And then it also reflects on how his mother was brought up, the challenges she faced. So now she wants to live her life, her dreams, through the son, and it's not okay. The sisters don't have time to invest in their relationships with their partners. They're busy, trying to guide the relationship, and suddenly they know best what is best for their brothers, and they don't have time and energy and resources to attend to their own relationships. But they're big on my brother Putuami, Abutuaka, Abutuaka. And then it's always unfortunate when Abutuaka actually entertains this. Because in that case, it means he's not spiritually mature. He's not emotionally matured. Age-wise, it might qualify him to be a husband, but spiritually and emotionally, definitely not. So when we are aware of these things, it makes it easier. So now the question is, okay, now you're in this situation where your husband entertains. I'll say entertains because if the mother-in-law and the sisters are doing it, but the man is clear-minded, it's not really an issue, because he will stick with you and support what you guys have discussed and prioritize you. So now the problem is when he entertains these things, and then you always have to hear what they decided with the mother and the sisters. That's where the challenge is. Then what do you do in that case? So now there's nothing that you can actually do with your mother-in-law or your sisters-in-law. It's not in your power. It's not your place to interfere with that. But keeping in mind that we want the two families to find a way of existing so that children can be able to interact with grandparents from both families. Because as bad as we can label a certain family, it's also not fair, because the man or the wife comes from a family, so they can't suddenly be bad. But there can be things that are doing that are not okay or that are bad, the things that they do. But we need the families, because there's something in it for the kids in both families. So we don't want to raise kids where we shut them out from another family. But of course, sometimes the frustration is so much that you end up doing just that. And which is unfortunate, because the kids are the ones that will be compromised. I mean, as adults, you'll survive, you'll be okay. But unfortunately, it also puts strain on the relationship. Ms. G says, husband should always have your back at all times. Absolutely. So now, if your husband is always confused and says, no, I don't want to offend my mother, and then he doesn't mind that when you are offended, because when you're strong, and his mother's got high blood pressure. His mother had, an operation. His mother raised him. She didn't have shoes. We acknowledge all of that. But once anybody violates the basic fundamentals of anything, it's not okay. It's like justifying why you stole. For the fact that you were hungry, that's why you stole, it doesn't justify that you stole. Stealing is stealing. The solution would be trying to see, what can I do? And then you still go back to God. God says work. You must earn. You must earn from your sweat of your work. So now we don't want to do what we need to do. We break the rules and still ask God and say, oh, life is tough, we don't know what happened. And so we make excuses for not doing what we're supposed to do and not respecting what we're supposed to respect. So now that's why we also spoke about the fundamentals, like choosing right from the start, because if you don't choose right from the start, it's harder. And if you're already in and you realize that, oh my God, I'm with a mama's baby, so to say, that's where the work begins, because you need to be praying about it. Pray to God about it, and also have practical solutions of saying, how can I, crack the core and just try to show him, make him understand. I can't read properly, but something about damage to future generation. This means we need to work hard to receive our healing. as parents to raise healthy kids? Absolutely, because whatever pain that we have as parents and we don't process it, we translate it directly. We translate it, we transfer it to our kids, and they have to carry that burden. And then they get into adult life and they're totally dysfunctional. They keep repeating exactly the same pains, the same mistakes that you made, because that pain is genetically transferred, is spiritually transferred, so to say. Also, Radi says, thank you. The one wives are expected to tolerate unhealthy relationship. Okay, I guess she's saying that's why wives are expected to tolerate unhealthy relationships. Yes. So now, once the relationship becomes unhealthy, if the role players don't know their places, that's where the problem is. So now, if Mama Zala is a problem, Khadi says wives are human, just like the mother-in-laws. Exactly. No one is a robot. Khadi says that it's absolutely like that. And then, but people have a way of thinking that wives are, robots, and they're hardcore. They must take it. They must prove themselves. And if you think about it, who are you proving yourself to? Who did they prove themselves to? When God says we must prove ourselves to Him, and He's already approved us, and we just have to follow His guidelines, so to say, and we should be okay. So once somebody violates what God has put together, it's a problem. Whether it's a mother-in-law, whether it's a friend, whether it's a sister-in-law, it's a problem. No one has a right to interfere in another person's marriage. So now the problem, of course, like we're saying, is that, so now what if your husband, unfortunately, had childhood issues? He's stuck with his mother, and his mother knows what buttons to press to even get him to hate you, or even get him, to see you as this, you're the problem, you're this person who is interfering with his peace. You don't want him to be happy. You don't want him to love his family. You don't want him to do this. So it becomes like a childish thing between the parties, and automatically, once we are still dealing with childish issues, what does it mean? It means we're not able to raise kids that are going to be leaders. We're not raising heads of kingdoms. We're raising slaves, kids that are going to be spiritual slaves, kids that are going to be psychological slaves, kids that are going to be emotional slaves because of our own decisions. So it's important just to become aware. I think just becoming aware, and also understanding what drives the in-laws, to especially when you're having challenges, to kind of interfere in the relationship. They want to segregate you and all of that. You can't actually do anything about your mother-in-law or your sister-in-law. The only person that you have control over, so to say, is your husband. So now he's the one that you must deal with. And you can't fight your mother-in-law. The problem is when you sit down with him and he doesn't understand, you're on your own. It's a problem. And then from that perspective, the issue is, okay, fine. You can't just walk away. You must try to work on it, because already you are in. There are kids. You've got a family together. There's so many things that will be, complicated if you were just to walk away. Of course, you must try to work on it. Engage him. So just you understanding that, okay, my husband, the reason this and this are happening, we need to be considering what are the things that have been happening from your family, generation to generation, and also what are the things that have been happening from my family, generation to generation, because it's affecting the state of our marriage. And if we don't solve it, it's going to affect the products that we're producing. So hopefully you're talking to somebody who is willing to listen. If they're not willing to listen, the best that you can do for now is, you pray about it, but you can imagine how stressful it is. That usually in those relationships, then you're forced to go to all the functions. You get there, you're the one who must cook. You get there, you're the one who must clean, because people just keep on putting, this standards for you of proving yourself to them. And you're thinking, Ghana, why are you proving yourself to them? Because your obligation is your husband and your kids. But people put those expectations on you, and you accept them because you think you don't have a choice. But now what you need to know is, already when you're in such a situation, the problem is how your husband was brought up, because how they were brought up reflects the mother. So now if the mother has power over her son, she knows what to say, when to say it is a problem. But now you have to find a way of saying, how can I sit him down and make him aware that me and your mother can never compete. She's your mother, I'm your wife. There's no competition here. But I'm here because I want us to give birth, to raise kids that are going to be healthier, more fit, that can create resources so that they never have to be competing with their children's wives and husbands because they are fighting for resources. So now you want to raise kids that are self-sufficient so that whether it's a girl or a boy, you're going to a marriage being self-sufficient and knowing who you are in God, so that you go into the marriage complete. Marriage cannot complete anyone. Marriage does not complete anyone. It's a tool or a platform that God has created. You need to be complete in yourself, in your identity of the one who has created you, and go into this marriage complete, because it makes it easier. So now, most of the time we go into marriages incomplete, and then we get there and we're surprised why things are so like messed up. We don't know where to start. Where is God now, and all of that. But when we look properly, we didn't take our time and say, did I check on this, at least the basics? How does God define marriage? How is it supposed to be? You go into a relationship knowing that very well your partner is cheating. You found him cheating, and then suddenly you expect him to not cheat. It's not going to happen. If you found him cheating, most likely he's going to continue cheating. If you found your partner drinking heavily, or drinking, so to say, most likely he's going to continue doing what he was doing when you found him. So the problem is, sometimes we think marriage is some transformative transaction or relationship where people are going to change. Marriage does not change people at all. Marriage is just a platform that God has created so that he can create more of himself in. So now, that's why I'm saying, look, if already you find yourself in a situation where you say, oh my God, I've got problems with the basics, I've got problems with the fundamentals, God, what should I do? You go back to God and say, God, this is the situation now. I'm going to meditate on my marriage. I'm going to work on it. I'm going to focus on you. And God doesn't want us to always trying to be preaching to our partners to say, no, go get saved. No, you don't pray properly. No, you must stop. No adult actually likes being preached to, so to say, or being taught like their children. You pray for them. God says you pray for them, and let your life be the living example so that somebody can change their hearts and their minds. And then also, because we know God is a God of faith and work, you need to be working on practical things to say, what can I do to try to work on this? So you have to create opportunities, inviting certain people that you feel he can listen to, so that he can get another perspective of what marriage is supposed to be. And for him to accept that, look, you're no longer a baby now. You have to let go of your mom. Letting go doesn't mean we don't take care of our parents. I mean, that one should still continue. We should be able to, even as we are married, make sure that our parents are okay. I mean, that is the right thing to do. We're talking about living as in your family finances cannot be discussed with your mother-in-law. I mean, that's not normal. When you want to do something in your house, and then your mother just calls a day before payday and starts crying and saying this and that, Kamo, you've got plans. And he's like, no, but my mother asked. And he can't even say to Mama, we already have plans. What you're asking me is not urgent, but we'll see how we can help you. So there are no boundaries, because the relationship was dysfunctional all along. And the mother continues to do that. She will do that forever and forever. And she doesn't even see a problem with it, because the problem is with her and it cannot be solved by you. You have done nothing. You didn't know her before you met him. So it's something that you found. And because nobody ever stopped and said, what are the generational problems in these families? And how can we break them? What do we need to break in our generation? What is it that is feasible for us to break in this generation, so that the next generation doesn't go through and say, okay, this one, even though we can't solve it now, but at least let's solve this one, so the next generation doesn't have to deal with so much more problems. So now, for a man who is willing to listen and who understands the impact, because what men don't understand is that sometimes they don't understand the fact that in him trying to please his mother, it causes us great pain, serious pain. And when the wife, the mother of the kid, his kids, is not okay, it affects how the children turn out. So now when you understand that it's not just about his mother, but it's about you guys focusing on your family unit so that everybody else is okay, and he's willing to understand that and he gets it, I mean, that is a blessing. So now when you have a husband who actually understands and he can embrace, is willing to listen, is willing to change because he wants peace in his home, he wants blessings, because when you feel loved and supported by your husband, he does even better at work. His blessings becomes more because you are the one who prays for him. Your prayers as the wife are far more powerful than prayers from his mother. Once he's married, his let's say blessings, so to say, your prayers are the most powerful. So now if he's still stuck on he wants his mother to pray for him, his mother to do this, there's total immaturity in terms of understanding. And that's where you can try to, bring that understanding. Ms. Chico says, in December there will be Musebeti, where you're expected to be a Makoti and work as if you were not doing anything the whole year. Exactly. So it's a boundary thing. I mean, you can't always be expected to act like a hero. And sometimes the sisters-in-laws are even younger than you, but they want to bully you. I mean, it doesn't even make sense. They're not even doing anything with their lives. You are working hard, and then they still want to bully you. It doesn't make any sense. I think it's a boundary thing, and we have to be able to tell our husband to say, look, unfortunately, I'm not going to be tolerating it any longer. I'm sorry. Somebody says, I'm empowered. God bless you. Mkhali says, you validated my feelings tonight. There's nothing wrong with me. Hi, T's cooking addiction. Limba says, blessed is the man who finds himself a wife. Absolutely. The reason God says that is once a man is married, his wife is his superpower, literally. Because when your wife feels blessed and loved, there's something that God put in a wife for her husband. If she feels loved and appreciated, the man will do well. That's why Proverbs 31 says he will never be poor as long as he is with her. But the key there is he has to do his part. He has to be clear in his mind what is his role in his what is his role towards his wife and the kids. There's no way they speak about his mama or his. There's no way in the Bible where they even entertain that. And we're not saying ignore our parents. We cannot ignore our parents, because the same way we love our parents, they also love their parents. But we have to create boundaries for our parents, both sides. There must be boundaries. It's not fair for my parents to want to come and overhaul our family, just as it's not fair for his parents to want to come and make rules in our family. So we have to create boundaries. And we must be able to tell the husband at some point that, look, I cannot do anything in terms of how you and your mother relate. T says it doesn't make sense. Absolutely. Norma says a boundary thing. Yes, absolutely. The thing is, we have to at some point say, look, I'm not trying to prove a point here, and I'm not a child. I've got children myself. I'm a woman. I'm a woman of stature. You chose me because you wanted to be with me. I cannot be going through tests every single day, every other day, from your sister, from your mom, and you expecting me to pass the test. It's not going to work. You have to man up. Me and you are accountable to each other. Our parents are not anywhere in the list, but we know at the back of our minds, it's a good thing to take care of them, but they cannot be part of our decision making on anything. And then you just tell him straight, look, next time when you go to thing, if I'm really tired, I don't want to cook, I'm not going to cook. If you can get catering, get catering. I'm not going to be sitting there stuck wearing a duke. Okay, I love dukes now and then, but I don't want to wear it just because I'm forced to, or I must look holy or qualified. Then it's not okay. Then you don't enjoy it, because you never feel like you're enough. Every other day there's a new rule. They don't like this now. You did this, you didn't do that. But then who is supposed to approve of you as a wife, if not God? Why are people making themselves God in your life, in your marriage, is not okay. So we have to set those boundaries and say, look, I understand you still have a soft spot for your mom, but unfortunately marriage is between me, you, and God. So I want to focus on God for our marriage so that we can get the blessings that we're supposed to get out of this marriage, so that we can create blessings that we are supposed to create out of this marriage. So now going forward, I will not tolerate it anymore, being bullied by your sister. I will not tolerate anymore being bullied by your mom. What I advise you is, please talk to your mom, please talk to your sister, so that I don't have to talk to them. But if I'm forced to talk to them, unfortunately, I'll have to talk to them and just make them understand that, look, I'm just trying to build my family. Can you give me a chance? And another helpful tool, especially for a man who is willing to work on this, is, everything that they ask for from his family. If they call him to request for something, it's easier that he says, okay, let me talk to my wife. That's the only way you can get respect, unfortunately, because if you think about it, it is about resources. It is about resources. Because if the in-laws, so to say, they are rich, filthy rich, you don't have time to be interfering in your child's marriage. You are busy going to spas, you are busy with your business, you are busy traveling, you are busy choosing clothes. But the minute there's shortage of resources, that's where people now, they just become something else, and they're willing to be aggressive and embarrass you because they want to fight for the resources. So now you should be able to say, look, let's take care of your parents. We'll make sure that we cover 1, 2, 3. Or let's say we can only allocate so much, and that's it. If they spend more than what we have allocated, unfortunately, we cannot give them more, because we have our own family to build. So boundaries are important. Communication, healthy boundaries, communication, and say, this is what we can afford, and that's it, and they must know. So now the husband must be able to sit his mom down, say, when the mom is asking for something, okay, let me talk to my wife, or please call my wife and find out. Even if you know it's not an issue, but you just want your name to be kind of at the center of the transaction, because it's a way of him saying, guys, I love my wife, and I want my wife to be happy. I want her to feel loved, because when she feels loved, things go well for me in my life. So I cannot do anything with you without my wife. So now if you need to ask for anything from me, you can't ask me something in the corner without my wife. I need to go sit down with my wife and hear what she says. He must actively tell them. It mustn't be like quick, like he doesn't want them to know. He must actually say, if he's brave enough, he must sit his parents down and say, Mama, Papa, thank you for everything, and now I'm a man, I'm married, can you help me to build my family? Give me space. If there's anything that you really need or to advise us, we welcome advice, but remember, I have to respect my wife so she can raise great kids for me. So I can't do anything without my wife. So he must put you at the front of approving these transactions, because otherwise, let me tell you, you don't count. On average, you won't count. But now when it's understood, Amity says, and when they think, okay, I think she was still typing. Okay, so, and when they think they can show up at my house without notifying me, unacceptable. Absolutely. Remember, that is your house. That is not his family house. Everything must go through you. You are Proverbs 31 woman. You are the queen. You can't just be having people coming in and out of your castle. It's not acceptable. So you have to be able to say, look, everything in this household goes through us, because we're a team. This is our thing. Because once you don't do that, then there's going to be boundaries, and we keep justifying it and all of that. Okay, hi, Togoza Sne. Hi, Mampurukop. Hi, Dr. Tembega. So now if there are no boundaries and you have to keep on justifying yourself, they come to your house unannounced and you must cook. And when at the time you're planning to go for a massage, suddenly you must cook, run around. You can't do this, and they're checking how you're cooking. Did you wipe the dishes after you cooked? I mean, we're not kids. We are not kids. So it's that thing of be confident in your position. Be confident in your role. and say, no, I won't tolerate it anymore. If I'm not what you want, if our union is not what you want, then you have to make a decision. But I will not be tortured and tormented every other day trying to prove myself to your mom, to your sisters, to your cousins. I'm not a child. I've got things to do. I've got a kingdom to build here. So now if I have to be proving myself, I have to run around. It's like I'm still in high school, but I'm a fully grown woman. So is that issue that if you don't know who you are according to the Creator, that's where the lines overlap. So I would like to close, ladies. I believe it's mostly ladies, okay, and gentlemen. I would like to close by saying that, let's keep in mind, Limba says most in-laws feel that they are entitled. Absolutely. And sometimes our culture is not on our side, because when you get married, you'll hear we are now taking in our daughter, not a makoti, than expectations. Of course, sometimes it's easier to see marriage from the eyes of God who created it. Because our culture, we must keep in mind, sometimes it's man-made. People make rules that suit them and they change them as it suits them. So I always say it's easier to look at yourself through the eyes of God and not through the eyes of culture, trends, and all of that. Go to the Creator, go to the drawing board and say, what does He say about this? And I'm standing on what He says. Whatever that He says I must do, I'm going to do. What He says I don't have to do, I don't have to do. And what I can't master or handle, I'll pray about it. Because sometimes you do need prayer, but you also need practical things that you need to do to make sure that this thing can change, this thing can happen, this thing can be what it's meant to be. So if you must keep in mind that marriage is a platform. Marriage does not complete people. And marriage is not for people to abuse or misuse in the name of Magodi. Marriage is a tool that is a blessing from God that He uses so that we can procreate for Him, so that He is glorified. And the good thing is He has given us roles, positions, responsibilities within the marriage. And everybody else must respect that. We have to remind everybody who is trying to interfere with the unity of marriage and for what marriage stands for, and remind them that marriage is only for 3 people. It's not for like me, you, and others, me, you, and your mom, and all of that. It will never work as long as there's interference in the marriage. So now the marriage is between a man and a wife with God in the middle. And when they come together in union, in unity with God, to sit down and consciously and acknowledge that what are the generational problems that come from your side, generational problems from my side. How can we acknowledge them so that they don't continue to happen? Otherwise, the generational problems will continue to happen from one generation. You'll do exactly what your mother did. You'll do exactly what your father did. And it's a surprise, like, but why am I behaving like my father? Why am I behaving like my mother? It's because we never sat down and acknowledged those challenges and said, we need to change these ones because they're not serving us. And then we need to highlight these ones because they're serving us to be able to build what we need to build. So when doing that, after you acknowledge that, okay, these are the generational problems, you start breaking them. Because once you break them, it clears the way for you guys to start building. And it gives, the building, strong building material that you can use for a solid family that will produce functional kids. Because for every dysfunctional child, for every dysfunctional adult, let's say even adult, there's a dysfunctional upbringing. There's something wrong that happened when they were, how they were being raised. And they continue to carry that burden, that pain into adulthood, into other relationships. And one is not usually aware when they're doing that, because you're not aware. You're so used to the pain, the frustration, the anger, the lies, just that abnormal way of thinking. You're so used to it that you don't even notice it until you stop and say, let's reflect on our lives, let's reflect on our families, so that we'll be able to build, a more refined product this time, and create boundaries in our relationships. Sit your man down, make him understand the impact of his blessings. Because when you are happy, when you feel loved, when you feel like he puts you first, when you feel like he protects you from his family, it just does something, you just feel inspired, you feel more loved. The prayers just, they rise higher easier when you feel like he's doing his part. But when you feel vulnerable all the time, that you have to defend yourself from his family, and you know he's not going to say anything, and then he thinks is toughening you up, it's not okay. It's not okay. So now you need to be in a place where you sit your partner down and say, look, these are the issues. 1, 2, 3 is not going to work anymore. I won't be able to tolerate it any longer. I've been doing it, and I've done it for 10 years, 5 years, and nothing has changed. I'm never good enough for them. And the reason I will never be good enough is they were never meant to assess me in the first place. Okay. That is my cue to say goodbye. I'm done for today. I hope this was useful. And as I always say, you are the angel that you need. There's no angel somewhere out there waiting for you to save you. You are what you need because God exists in you. He is living through you. He is that majestic thing that should give you authority to live the life you're supposed to live, honestly. And you're also the angel for others because God has placed in every one of us something for somebody else. That's why we'll always need each other. That's why there's something that I'll get from you. That's why there's something that you'll get from me. Tokozani says thank you. Khaladi said thank you. Lots of love. Mukhadi says learned a lot. Hello, cooking with Landela. Sorry. Limba say bye, lady. It was a fruitful hour. Khaladi says amen. Thank you so much for joining. I really hope this was useful. As you go out there and you know, do what you're supposed to do. I mean, you are glorious. You are a queen. You are running a castle, so you can't be having people running in and out of your kingdom as they please. As they please, they come in, they go out. They like this, they don't like it. When are you ever gonna reign in glory in your kingdom? No. Amiti says Enkosi, it was insightful. Amarin says thank you. Gondi says thank you. I'm going to close off in the next 2 minutes. I'm just waiting for the last comments, but I'm basically done. Hopoto says thank you for wisdom pearls. Part 2 joined. I'm sorry I keep kicking this. I'm so sorry. Ndebele Source joined. Ladies are joining in. Hello everyone who's joining now, but we're actually done. You'll be able to listen on the Instagram TV. I'll post it. But I hope you're courageous. You have to be courageous so that your kingdom can stand. You can't have other women helping you to build your kingdom. That has to stop. And unfortunately or fortunately, your man is the one that you need to be dealing with, not your mother-in-law, your sisters. And he must understand that if he can't handle them, you'll be forced to handle them. Healthy boundaries, yebo, yes, siyabonga. Hello ladies, I see more ladies are joining. We are done. 1 more minute, then I'm going to close. I also have duties to attend to. You know, remember the woman is the nurturer to the husband and the kids. I also want to get my blessings, so I want to do what I need to do. And I hope you do that too, courageously, and know that God has approved of what you're doing. And as long as you also do your part, what you want from others, you must also give it. It's not fair if you want things that you are not giving yourself. Bomi says, thanks, mama. Okay, 1 more minute, then I'm closing. One last comment or question for me. But otherwise, goodbye and good night to all of you. Raise your heads up. You are there for a reason, and don't allow anybody else to make you, you know, undermine your position, your role, and what you need to do. It's not about other people, it's about your kingdom, and you must defend it. Defend it. All right. Forever Queen says, T's Addiction invited us here. Oh, hi T, thanks for inviting the ladies. I hope they will listen on the Instagram TV because we're basically done. Deborah D says, thank you, Mama. We're basically done, but I'm glad that all of you joined, and thanks for coming in, rushing in to join. And I hope this is very useful because we need more and more women that are affirmed. because that's the only way that we'll be able to produce future leaders, men and women who are healthy, who are fit to engage in relationships, in opportunities, in whatever that they need to do in life, and above all raise, build families and raise kids that are going to be heirs in this kingdom, in this world. Good night, everyone. Bye.